It's the day after Ceecee and her foal Poppy arrived from the 2012 Kaimanawa muster. My first job in introducing Ceecee to her new and very different domesticated life was to introduce her to touch and ultimately, for day one, a halter. This was a big ask, but by using my cattle yards I was able to keep myself at a safe distance, and it wasn't long before I had a rope placed round her neck and was introducing her to pressure and release. This is a very important step, as all horses, be they wild like Ceecee or domesticated, respond initially to pressure by trying to escape. If we are to successfully work with them, they must first learn to yield to this pressure and not be frightened by it. I was amazed at how little pressure Ceecee responded to, and how quickly she worked out that yielding to this pressure would bring about her reward, which was a gentle release. She soon learnt that the best place to be, as she was free of pressure, was close to me. I could now work towards her being relaxed about touch. As soon as I was able to touch her whole face, it was time to slowly introduce her to the halter. Tomorrow's lesson would be leading, but now I was just enjoying being close to her. First things first, my new additions to the family required quite a bit of food. It gave me a great opportunity to interact with Ceecee and Poppy. My next step was to get Ceecee familiar with and accepting of touch as soon as possible. Ceecee had quite a few bite marks on her from her time as a wild horse. This told me that she probably, being a younger mare, was at the bottom of her pecking order, and I therefore expected her to resist my attempts at touching her. I needed to show her that touch could in fact be a good thing. My first touch of the baby. Now it was time for Ceecee's first brush. As I expected, she wasn't too keen on this initially, and you couldn't blame her. Reprimanding this behaviour was an important step. Once she knew she shouldn't tell me to leave her alone, she was left with no option but to concentrate on what I was doing, and suddenly realised it was actually quite nice. The only problem was Poppy wondered when it was going to be her turn. If you get in your care a horse that's maybe never been fed hard feed before, or in my case a couple of Kaimanawas that have no idea what hard feed is, this is a great tip to help introduce them to that wonderful feed that as horse owners we like to give them, but it's a little bit foreign. In my case, my horses love grass. Some horses are very keen on hay, so find out what motivates them to eat. So in Ceecee's case, it's freshly picked grass. So add some grass to a favourite bowl that they like to eat out of, then get the hard feed that you'd like to introduce and simply sprinkle it over the top. You could start off on day one with just a little bit. Now the idea is, as they dig into the grass or the hay, they'll get a little bit of the hard feed and they'll get a taste for it. It was important to continue with getting Ceecee used to not only touch but also the concept of pressure and release, so that when I applied pressure to her lead, release would come, but as she stepped towards me only. This is obviously not only important in teaching her to lead, but also necessary before I can safely expect to be able to tie her up. This was also Ceecee and Poppy's first time out of their yard and a chance to have a little look around. The next day had brought quite a bit of rain, so I was keen to be able to lead Ceecee into another larger enclosure to get her out of the mud. This would further enable me to judge that Ceecee was in fact adjusting to this new way of life and therefore could safely be let out ultimately into a paddock. Initially I led her around to give her a good look at her new enclosure, not only as it was good practice for her but also to make sure she knew her boundaries and therefore wouldn't panic when released and go through a fence. She seemed pretty relaxed about the whole thing. The test would be if I could still catch her tomorrow. It was the next day after I'd let Ceecee into a bigger area, and I was impressed that she chose not to run away from me even though she had the opportunity. Poppy, her foal, was in a neighbouring yard as I had chosen to wean her the day before as I thought it was time. Ceecee seemed very relaxed at my presence today, which was great as I had a lot of firsts in store for her. She seemed very relaxed walking with me even though Poppy was clearly trying to distract her. It was important just to give her time here and reward any attempt to come forward, as there were all sorts of firsts. Stepping on rubber mats, stepping on concrete, and stepping into her very first shed, which must have been bizarre for a horse who was wild only a few days earlier. After taking a short bit of time for her eyes to adjust to the dark, in she came. What amazed me the most was her trusting nature. I've had domestically bred horses kick up more fuss. Next, it was a great reward, some of her favourite tucker, while she received her second grooming session of her life. Tomorrow I was planning even bigger things for her. Poppy, Ceecee's foal, was giving me the vibe she wasn't going to be as straightforward as her mother, which, considering Ceecee had spent a lot more time as a wild horse, I would have thought it to be the other way around. So in order to progress, we needed to get a halter on Poppy. She was not going to take to this as calmly as her mother, so the best option was a small area of the cattle yards where there was little chance for escape. Unlike Ceecee, where she accepted me placing a rope round her neck without any stress, Poppy required a bit more cunning. Now to slowly inch the rope around her nose and ultimately replace it with the halter. So it was just a matter of persistence and patience. Quite a bit of it. And then, finally, persistence pays off. I attach a short rope to assist me in catching her tomorrow. And then she's released. That was a big day for her, so the next step in her education would have to wait until tomorrow. She didn't seem too upset with me though.
It's the first morning after Ceecee has spent the night in her new paddock, and I'm keen to see if she will let me catch her. She didn't seem to mind my intrusion at all, and she carefully followed me out. And into the shed, without hesitation this time. She must have enjoyed her last visit. Then a quick recap on the familiar territory of brushing before I launch into her next big first, a bath. I was once again truly amazed. How foreign could sponges, bubbles, water running out of hoses and sweat scrapers possibly be? But not only did she accept it, she seemed to enjoy it. And last but not least, a cuddle. I don't know who enjoys this part more.
Just 1 week after her arrival, there were a couple more firsts in store for Ceecee today. Sacking out, as it's sometimes known, is an important step in getting a horse used to touch, and seeing as I was keen to soon cover Ceecee, it was a great step towards this. Next up, I was keen to introduce her to her very first paddock. It was important to take her for a walk around her boundary, as she sure hadn't had one of those before. Although only running wild a week earlier, I don't think she was too worried about her new life, as her eyes were bulging at the sight of all that good green stuff. Quite different from tussock. With a quick snack grabbed in every corner, it was time to make a beeline for that foreign object in the middle of the paddock. A concrete trough. As terrifying as it was, she finally agreed to check it out and seemed delighted to learn of its contents. Now it was time to leave her in peace to enjoy that stuff that had been distracting her. The next morning after haltering Poppy, I was interested to see if she'd let me catch her. The feed seemed to do the trick, but as soon as she realised we were attached, she wasn't too happy. Lunchtime brought another opportunity for me to visit her again, and she seemed to be warming to the idea, easily accepting my presence. But then, maybe not. And then roles reversed and she decided to give me a lesson in leading. There's a reason I don't run. It was important to introduce her gradually to the concept of a paddock, as of course coming from the ranges she had not seen too many fences. So I would leave her here tonight, and all going well she would be able to enjoy a hoon in a new paddock tomorrow. The next morning she remembered her lessons of yesterday and happily let me catch her, even without feed, which impressed me. Now another quick recap on leading and she would be free. Well, as free as being in captivity could be. And she loved it. And Mum? Well, she couldn't care less. Exactly 2 weeks from today, Ceecee was a wild horse on the Kaimanawa ranges. There was a chance she was in foal, so I didn't want to do too much more with her. But before I turn her out until the spring, I wanted to introduce her a little more to her future life. First step, the unfamiliar arena. All going well, I was planning to back her today. This meant getting her used to me being above her. There were all sorts of scary objects in here, including show jump poles and even other horses being worked. She acted like she'd seen it all before. Then I wanted to introduce her to lunging, which she picked up very quickly. Now for preparing her for the ultimate, being able to sit on her. She didn't seem too fazed by all this fuss, and by the look on that face I would say she was even enjoying it. She even tolerated us while we posed for a Kodak moment for horsing around NZ. And as the paparazzi continued to click, she happily tolerated all of it. She'd learned a lot about domesticated life, and I had learned a lot about this amazing breed. Now it was time for Ceecee to enjoy a well-deserved holiday.